This recipe is for burger and rolls. In my bowl I have 300 grams of strong plain flour, and I'm just going to add half a teaspoon of salt. I don't use a lot of salt in my cooking, but I do think there's a couple of occasions where you really need to have salt in your food, and making bread is one of those. I'm also going to put in there 1 sachet of fast acting yeast. So I've got the salt and the yeast in my bowl, and then I'm going to rub in just 15 grams of margarine. Now this is not a lot of margarine, and it's just to help stop the bread rolls from going stale really quickly. It won't stop them going stale as much as shop bought bread, but the 15 grams of fat just adds a little bit of texture to your bread and will help to stop it going stale that fast. When you think you have rubbed in the flour enough, shake your bowl, and what you should find is that any large lumps of fat will rise to the top and will be visible. So I'm just going to wash my hand. Okay, the next thing I need to do is to put my water in this bowl, and it's really important that your water is warm. So you should be able to put your finger in it and feel that it's nicely warm. If it's cold, it's not a problem, but it will mean that your bread will take longer to rise, and in the lessons we don't have huge amount of time, so having the bread rise more quickly is an advantage. So I've used, there's 200 mils of water in this measuring cylinder, and I've added 100 mils of boiling water to 100 mils of cold water. And with bread, you want to put most of your water in, but not all. It's never a good idea to put all of the liquid in one go, because you're never quite sure how absorbent your flour is going to be. So stir with a knife, not a spoon, because a knife is flat and you won't get a pocket of dry mixture on a knife in the same way as you would with a spoon. And I can see that that's not enough flour. It's starting to clump, but there's far too much dry flour in there, so I need to add a little bit more of the water. And it is where you use your own judgment for this, and this is one of the places that is you making decisions and hopefully having the confidence not to ask your teacher all the time. I can see down this side here there's still quite a bit of flour which is dry, so I'm just going to put a little bit more water in. It's quite hard to get extra water into a dough if you've got it all into one dough to start with. You tend to end up with quite a lumpy dough, so my advice would be add your water slowly, paying attention to what you're doing. When it goes together like that, basically into a ball, put your hands in and start squeezing and kneading. You can see there's still a little bit of dry mix in the bowl, but not lots. It is better to have a bread dough which is too wet rather than too dry. If it's too dry, it will not allow the gluten to develop. If it's too wet, we can solve that with a little bit more flour on the worktop, and as you knead it and work it, bread tends to dry up anyway. So I'm just going to put a little bit of flour down on my worktop, take my bread dough out of my bowl, which is basically clean, and then knead. And I'm just going to rub flour over my hand to knead. Take the mixture furthest away from you, fold it in half and push it away from you again. Turn your dough and repeat. And it's important that you turn your dough every time you do this. Now some people will hold one end of the dough and push hard away. I like to use both hands to bring the bread into the middle. If I turn this over and show you, you should be able to see, hopefully, the top of this dough is not smooth. What we need to do is knead this until this dough is as smooth as a baby's bottom. Not a baby with nappy rash, but a baby that's got a nice, clean, healthy looking bottom, nice, clean skin. If you keep moving your dough quickly, it should not, hopefully, stick to your worktop. What you don't want to do is have loads of flour on your worktop, so that as you are kneading, the dough absorbs all that extra flour. So you can make your dough quite dry if you have too much flour on your worktop. That's nowhere near done, you can see from looking at the dough. So I'm going to keep kneading this. It's going to take between 5 and 10 minutes to get this dough to be nice and smooth. Right, I've been kneading this bread dough for about 5 minutes, and when I turn it over now, it's lovely and smooth on the top. So I've got to divide this into 4. So just divide your dough into 4. This is going to make 4 large rolls, little roll. If I put this in the oven like that, it's not a cake, it's bread, so it will stay exactly in that shape. So each bread roll needs kneading with fingers, 1 or 2 fingers at a time, until you can see that around the outside of the roll it looks nice and smooth. You can then scrunch it all up, roll it, flatten it a little bit and put it onto a greased or a lined baking tray. I've greased mine, so I will cover these, put them somewhere to one side, warm, clean down my worktop, wash my mixing bowl, ready to make the burgers. Okay, having cleaned up my worktop, I'm now going to make a start on the burger. So I've got a small red onion, which I need to finely chop. So remember to keep all the mess from the onion off your chopping board and out of the way. So I'm just going to put it onto some paper here so that it makes it easier to pick up. If you cut your onion in half first, it makes it so much easier to get the skin off. So cut your onion in half, get rid of any dry outer layers of skin, or as in the case of this, it's partly dry, doesn't look very nice. I'm just going to take that layer off as well. Keep the top and tail on your onion, so keep the root and the other end on the onion. And then we need to finely chop this. So to finely chop this, I'm just going to remove one end of my onion, and then it needs to be sliced. So nice and finely, left the root end on, but I'm going to cut down into my onion really thin slices this way, so that I'm not actually going up to the root. And I'm going to use bridge hold because I want to keep my fingers out of the way. Right, so I can still pick that up, it's still holding together, and then because I want this to be really finely sliced, I can't do it this way round, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut part way through there, turn it round, and then using claw grip chop it down. And I want really, really small pieces of onion from this. You don't want large lumps of raw onion in your burger. And to be honest, half an onion, even though that was a small onion. I think that's going to be plenty in with the burger mix, so I'm just going to do 1/2 of my onion. So I'm going to add that to the bowl where I already have 200 grams of minced beef. I can get rid of the rubbish as well. So I've got 200 grams of minced beef, 1 egg, so I've put a whole egg in, and I'm going to add a tiny little bit of seasoning. So I'm going to put a little bit of salt in and some black pepper. Now you can add other flavourings to this. You can add garlic, you can put herbs in it. I've seen people put tomato puree or tomato sauce in with this. Just be careful if you're going to add anything liquid. If you wanted to do a chilli burger, you could put dried crushed chilies in, or a bit of chilli powder. You could add whatever you want to it. But the next bit, you've just got to put your hand in and mix this together. So just squash it all together through your fingers and make sure that that egg and the onion all get completely mixed up all the way through. And I find using my hand by far the easiest. If you really don't think you can put your hand into this mixture and you think that it's going to be too uncomfortable for you, then by all means use a fork, not a spoon. So I just find it easier to put my hands in, give it a really good mix, and that onion is nice and small, so it's not going to leave large lumps of raw onion anywhere. I'm just going to get the worst of that off my hands and wash my hand again. Okay, now I've got clean hands, I'm going to use my raw meat board and divide this mixture up. And I've got 200 grams of meat here, so I am going to make 4 2-ounce burgers. So 4 small burgers. And probably the easiest way to do that is to put all of your meat onto your chopping board and then shape it into a roll. Doesn't have to be perfect, and use a knife then and just cut it or divide it into 4 pieces. Now these burgers are all going to be cooked at the same time, and if you need to, you might need to add a little bit of flour to your hands just to help stop the burgers from sticking. So you can just pat flour onto your fingers, it doesn't have to be loads, and shape the burgers. It's quite a soft mixture, but you can shape your round burgers. If I was going to be doing this for an exam and I wanted to make sure that all of my burgers looked perfect, what I would be doing is using a pastry cutter, popping the burger inside the pastry cutter or the burger mixture, and then just flattening it out in there, lifting the cutter off, just smoothing down the edges, and I've got a perfectly straight-sided burger. Either way, 4 burgers need to be shaped. And my bread rolls I put in the grill, the top oven of my cooker. The cooker is on, ready, so the oven is on, ready to cook these. It's on gas mark 200 degrees, so the heat from the oven means that the rolls have risen. And if you just touch them gently, they should spring back, and you shouldn't be able to see where your finger mark is. And I can't see that, the rolls are just springing back. So I'm going to pop these into the hot oven 10 minutes, and while I'm doing that, while they're cooking in the oven, I'm going to cook the burgers. The burgers that I've made feel really soft to me, so I'm going to cook them on foil in the grill. So I have the grill tray there, but I'm just going to line my grill with a bit of foil, and at the edges I'm just going to leave the foil turned up at the edges so that any juice that comes out of the burgers or any fat that comes out will hopefully stay in this tray, stay in the foil, and it should mean that I don't have to spend a long time washing my grill. So I have my 4 burgers, and because they are soft, I'm going to use a fish slice to lift them onto the foil. So I'm just going to put all 4 burgers on the foil. They're going to take about 5 minutes each side to cook, and it's really important that you don't try and move them too quickly. So I'll show you what we want them to look like before they are turned the first time. And if your burgers lose their shape as you move them over, you can reshape them just with your finger as I did there. So my grill is on a medium heat. I don't want it to be on a very high heat. I want it to be on a medium heat, and 5 minutes each side. Okay, the burgers have had 5 minutes on the first side, and what you're looking for in the colour is that we want to see that the brown is definitely going down the side of the burgers. We don't want just a thin layer of brown on the top, because we want to make sure that these are cooked all the way through. And I can also see that we've got some juice coming out of the burgers. So having had 5 minutes on that first side, they are a little bit firmer now, and I am going to turn them over and give them 5 minutes on the next side. And again, you need to keep timing. It's important to keep track of your timings while you're doing this, and the bread rolls have been cooking while the burgers have been doing. So I can see these small rolls that I've done are risen, and if I tap the bottom of them, they sound hollow. The 2 bigger ones are not quite done, and now they're cooked. I think doing 4 of the bigger rolls would probably have been better. So I'm just going to take off the 4 small rolls, put the 2 bigger ones back into the oven just for a couple more minutes. Okay, the rolls are out. They've just had a couple more minutes, and when you tap them on the bottom, they sound hollow. So the rolls are cooked. The burgers have had 5 minutes on the second side, and on the second side they've browned a little bit more. You can see there's some juice come out of the burgers there. They've started to brown. All the juices on the tray are now looking brown, and when I turned these over, first of all, there was a little bit of blood underneath them, but you can see that's all cooked through, and there is no red underneath anymore. So I just need to move these off my grill pan. Move the grill pan out of the way. The last way that you can check if you are at all concerned about whether your burgers are cooked through or not would be to cut one through to the middle. And if you cannot see any blood in the middle, and I can see that that's brown all the way through, then your burgers are done, and you can split one of your rolls. These are the right size for those rolls. Put a burger inside a roll, and you have your burger in a roll completed.